Hi, I'm Ellen Devine Hair on Instagram. I'm a Sambia ArTeam member, and today we're going to talk about how to balance layers when wearing a side part. So we have already gone and pre-cut some layers in the back of the head. They're sitting about mid-length just to get a little bit more lift out of the cut. Now the only difference when we finish throughout the right and left side is that they have a side part. Now the easiest way to cut layers is when someone has a middle part. It's perfectly symmetrical, everything's gonna line up easy, but working with a little bit of asymmetry can throw the layers off quite a bit. And I know middle parts are cool, side parts are lame, but that's not true. Side parts are coming back. If you tune into Fashion Week, we saw some deep side parts with a little bit of volume happening. Very exciting stuff. I am a millennial, so long live the side part. But in all reality, we all need to know as hairdressers how to accommodate any kind of part that our guests come in with, because it's most important that our guests leave with something that makes them feel confident and suits them. So let's move on how we can balance that side part and make it easier on ourselves. When I was taught how to cut hair, I always started in the back with my layers, and that guideline just continued all around the front, which is great. When you have a middle part and you pick up pieces from the right side and the left side, and you go ahead and say, boom, I'm gonna cut square, and even those layers out, it works great. However, when you have a side part, if I cut square to those two pieces, watch where the right side floats to, right about there, and watch where the left side goes to. It's a bit longer than on the right side. The side with more hair has to travel further across the head and in turn sits up a little bit higher and shorter, whereas the shallow side of the part has to travel less and it falls a little bit longer. So how do we balance this? Now this is a formula someone shared with me, and I want to share it with you because it truly changed how I cut my layers with the side part. Since we know when you cut with a middle part, it's perfectly symmetrical and everything lands evenly, we're gonna do a little formulation based off of where the distance of the side part and the center part is. So let's find where our center part would be if we didn't have our side part. So I'm just gonna show you with the spine of the comb. I'm gonna rock up from the dead center of the nose right here, and that is where our side part would be. I'm gonna mark it with my finger and just put a clip on it so I can visually see. We're right about there. All right, so here's the formula. When looking at the side part versus where the middle part would be, you're looking at about an inch difference. So the side part is to the left parted about an inch away from the middle part. Now, how do we use this formula to balance our layers? I'm gonna take the clip out. Now that I know that the side part is 1 inch difference from where the middle would be, that means I need to cut the side with less hair 1 inch shorter than the side with right hair. This will allow the hair to fall evenly and visually look balanced. So we're gonna start by finishing the entire deep side part on my right side, and we're just gonna line all that up with the same guide from the back. After, we'll move on to the shallow side on the left and show you how to cut that shorter in order to balance. I'm working with my long cutting comb in white so I can see it against the hair, and actually cutting the hair with the Sambia Classic Cutting Shear. I love these, they cut so smooth and so nice on dry hair as well, so you can use them wet or dry. They have our classic handle. So we're gonna take a vertical section. My body position right now is gonna move because we're gonna be cutting short to long, and it's a little bit tricky to go in long to short. So I'm gonna step on the opposite side and just get out of the way so you can see here. There is our guide. So my fingers are just going to angle up just like so, and just cut. I sort of just rock out those ends. The reason I'm doing that is we want to keep length at the bottom. So we have a nice blunt cut. I'll add any texture in after we finished our layers. Next section, vertical. Picking up our guide from the previous section, elevating that hair straight up to the ceiling. My body position is gonna move because it's easier to cut short to long. I'm gonna elevate up, find my guide, and just lower my elbow and just cut short to long. Now, as we get to the hairline, we need to be very conscious of the actual gap that can happen when you get to the hairline. So I always make sure to leave at least a 1/2 inch difference from the hairline between the layers. So that means I'm not taking an extremely vertical line, I'm picking it up and I'm allowing that little bit of diagonal hairline to fall out so that we don't get a hole when cutting. The right side is complete. We have all our little layers sitting up. We can add some face framing, but we're gonna pause until we finish all the internal layering that's happening. So now we're gonna go to this front side that's more shallow, and we're just gonna pick up a little tiny piece. We don't want the entire section yet. This is just how I like to go about it. Okay, so we have our long section and a little piece from the opposite side. And we want to start by just cutting that square. You don't have to do this, but I just want to show you visually. So we're going to cut that square so it's even. Here's just a reminder what could happen. Short, long. So we know to balance this left side, we want to make sure we don't pick up the right side hair. This left side needs to be 1 inch shorter than the other side. So we've already matched our guide right there. So now I know I can take about 1 inch off this and we'll be good to go. So I'm taking 1 inch off, and that is my new guideline for my next section. So I'm just gonna push that to the side, take a vertical section, continuing our layering, elevating everything straight up, and we're gonna continue that diagonal line, cutting short to long so that we leave length because they wanna keep their long hair. So we're gonna take that, there's our new guide, and just cut a blunt line. Okay, before we move on, let's see if we are on track here and if we need a little more off. It's okay if you have to cut twice. Now that we are even in our layers, I'm gonna go to the next section here. Same thing, vertical line, vertical section, picking up from the previous. I always like to leave the hairline out. So no hair is being picked up from the perimeter at all, just so that we don't get a hole just in case. Taking everything square up. And dropping. Next section. Just moving along as we go. Elevating straight up. My guide, peel back so you can see. My guide is right there. Let's resection, make sure everything's combed nice and tight. You don't have to do this dry by any means. I'm doing it dry so you all can see visually what's taking place. You can do this wet as well if you'd like. The last couple sections are going to be a little bit more diagonal because I just want to go along with the hairline. Once again, if you want to add face framing in the cut, totally can. We just don't want to cut too much off the bat. Okay, now that we have checked that everything looks nice and even, we can go ahead and add that hairline in and cut a little bit of face framing, just doing the exact same thing that we did with layering. I always like to make sure I'm on the right track before I move into the perimeter in front of the face. So we're just doing the same thing on both sides. Once we get that top part down, we'll connect the bottom, pulling everything straight up. Now when we're finished too, I'm gonna go in with another shear and just soften any harsh lines that I see. Okay, so we're starting to get a nice face framing right here. Because this perimeter fell out when we elevated it so high, we just need to connect the dots here. So I'm just gonna come in from behind and just elevate straight out using the classic shear and just doing the same motion, just sort of whittling away to give a nice soft perimeter. Now to make this even softer, we're gonna pick up our 14 tooth point cutting shear. Because we cut a blunt line, we wanna go through and just use those shears to break up any kind of harsh bluntness that we may not want in that perimeter. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. We are almost there. We have picked up our 14 tooth point cutting shear. This is an awesome shear to do any kind of heavy lifting that you don't have to point cut a bunch into a million times through the rest of the haircut. Just a couple snips and it literally will mimic as if you're point cutting into the hair. So once again, I'm gonna lower that mannequin and just show y'all how it works. I'm gonna go ahead and just pick up to that same elevation so you can get a clear image here. There's that blunt line. Going in with that 14 tooth point cutting shear, and I'm just gonna take a cut, and you can see that negative space that it creates. If you wanna do even more, I'll slide out and hit a different section. You can see the amount of softness that comes from just 2 snips. I'd pause there just for my taste and move on. No rules on how much or how little that you can or can't do this. You could do an entire haircut with this if you'd like. So we're gonna snip a little bit lower and one more towards the ends. So we're gonna go ahead and do this all over, just doing a couple snips at a time, breaking up any kind of too blunt of line that we don't want, and then we'll catch up for the end result. And that's our final look. That is how we can balance layers when wearing a sidecar. I really hope you got something out of today. If you want to stay connected with me, my Instagram is Devine Hair. Any questions, go ahead and send them my way. And go ahead and subscribe to the Samvia YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all of our free education.